Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are we're strapping ourselves into the sweltering, treacherous world of 1830s New Orleans. I mean, this is a city where every shadow seems to hide a secret, and the heat, the summer heat itself, feels like this physical barrier,
Yeah.
trapping you.
It's a setting that instantly, it just puts you on edge. The source material doesn't just say it's hot.
No.
It describes the weather as a damp and itchy blanket,
Ugh.
suffocating, thick. And that sense of physical discomfort, it really mirrors the relentless social pressure that our protagonist, Benjamin January, is facing.
Oh, absolutely. We are diving deep into the harrowing story of this man, January, who is so uniquely positioned between worlds. He's a native of New Orleans, born a slave, but then he spends 16 years in Paris.
16 crucial years.
Right, studying surgery, and he only comes back after this immense tragedy, losing his wife to cholera.
And you have to think about that internal conflict for a moment. Here's a man who vowed he would never return to the land of his enslavement. Yet grief is what drives him back. He brings this sophisticated European education, this whole new perspective, right back into the rigid racialized structure of the antebellum South.
And even with all that training, he's hit with constant professional setbacks. He ends up working mostly as a talented piano player, a musician.
Yeah.
He only occasionally gets to practice as a surgeon. And the sources are very clear about why. Even among the Libres, the free people of color, there was this visible preference for professionals with lighter skin.
A whole hierarchy within a hierarchy.
Exactly. More European features. So he's already fighting this uphill battle within his own community.
So the stage is set for a breakdown, right? Financial, physical, emotional. And our mission today is really to analyze this account, this desperate journey that's kicked off by sudden, catastrophic financial ruin.
And it's a journey that takes place under these twin shadows. You have the Mississippi River with all its physical dangers, and then the brutal, unrelenting reality of the slave trade. For January, the stakes aren't just about money, they're existential.
They really are. And the warning signs, they start right at home, immediately mixing that financial reality with the deeply rooted supernatural beliefs of the city.
I love this part. The inciting incident is just, it's chilling.
It really is. January's wife, his current wife, Rose, finds a rooster's head.
Right.
It's part of a voodoo wanga, a curse, in the room of their pupil, a young girl named Cosette. And it's covered in black wax.
And this isn't just, some vague threat. A rooster's head, specifically, that signifies immediate, deliberate, maybe even lethal trouble.
It's aimed right at their household. The danger is already inside the house.
That Wowanga is just the perfect introduction to New Orleans itself, isn't it? It's a place layered with all these things, French customs, deadly practicality, and these powerful African-derived cultural traditions that dictate life and death, on the ground.
Regardless of what the white establishment believes or even understands.
Right.
So let's pull back and explore those layers, because you can't understand January's desperation without understanding the incredibly challenging social position of the Libres. His own backstory illustrates this fragility perfectly. He was born a slave child. He only gained his freedom when his mother became the mistress of a wealthy sugar broker.
And this gets us into the whole institution of plissage, which is central, absolutely central, to the identity of so many free people of color in New Orleans.
And it was not simple. It's easy to just dismiss it as exploitation, but it was a complex transactional system where wealthy white men took on what were essentially quasi-wives.
You have to analyze the complexity there, right?
Yeah.
Because while it's rooted in a power imbalance, in racial exploitation, the sources suggest that plissage was, kind of ironically, one of the few viable economic pathways for free women of color.
A pathway denied to them through legal means. January's mother and Cosette's mother as well, they used these arrangements to secure actual assets, a house, an income, critical investments. These things provided real, lasting financial independence.
It was a trade-off, a terrible one in many ways, but one that often secured a much, much higher quality of life than these women could have achieved otherwise in that racist society.
It really speaks to the utter lack of agency available outside of that system.
And even with that, January and Rose, they live a relatively comfortable life. They have this Spanish-style house on Rue Esplanade, but where do they get the money for it?
Right, from a pirate gold cache, of all things.
Which is a whole other story.
Yeah.
But comfort does not equal security, not even close. They are burdened by this huge debt, $9,000.
And the clock is ticking. The critical part is that an installment of $2,250 is due in a terrifyingly short amount of time. 3 months.
Just 3 months. And this is where we see what Rose is doing as this act of profound resistance against that very system, her school.
Her school for girls of color, Cosette, Germaine, Marianne, and her curriculum. The sources describe it as sheer quixoticism.
I love that word for it. Quixoticism, because she's teaching them science, mathematics, Latin, literature.
So why is that quixotic?
Well, because she's giving these girls intellectual tools that society had explicitly decided were useless for them, even detrimental for their likely future. The accepted path was what the source calls the acceptable feminine mold.
The one useful for plissage.
Exactly. Rose is trying to prepare them for a life of intellectual autonomy, of choice.
Yeah.
But the entire system is insisting they only need to prepare for transactional dependency.
And the sources drive this point home so well. It notes that Cosette devoured this learning with the hasty guilt of one who knows she'll be forced into a more acceptable feminine mold on the morrow.
That's heartbreaking.
It is. Rose's school is this little sanctuary of defiance in a world that wants to crush it.
But the threat of that older, darker New Orleans culture, it's always there. The voodoo, the fear of the unknown, it's immediately linked to their financial problem.
We see that cultural mix so vividly in Congo Square, the twilight dances, the singing, the drumming, and it's often watched by these curious white spectators who are just treating it like entertainment.
Or folklore.
Something quaint. Right. But among the practitioners, we meet these legendary figures who hold genuine, tangible power in the community. People like Dr. Brimstone, John Bayou, and of course the hugely influential Voodoo Queen Regine, also known as Olympia Snakebones.
In January, with his Parisian, rationalist education, he looks at all this through a secular lens. But he cannot ignore its power.
He can't. He ends up confronting Queen Regine in the St. Louis cemetery.
What's she doing?
She's performing a curse for a client. She's burying a split beef tongue with a judge's name sewn into it, lighting a black wax candle. It's serious business.
And January intervenes, mostly because he's worried she's influencing Cosette.
Right.
But Regine doesn't take it well. She unleashes this terrifying curse directly on him.
Yeah, she says, "Gede, 5 days unhappy, tear the roof away from over his head, and then Marionette of the Dry Arms, take his wife from him and let him walk the roads of the earth to search for her."
Chilling stuff. Now, January, the man who's read Locke and Hume, he dismisses the spiritual part of it. He believes the strength of God is stronger than any spirit like Gede or Ozanker. But, and this is the crucial analytical nugget, what he does fear are the practical dangers she represents.
Exactly. He's not afraid of a spirit. He's afraid of, and I'm quoting here, poison and surreptitious fires set in the kitchen.
Right.
He realizes that if that spiritual curse tears the roof away, translates into arson, if his beautiful Spanish-style house burns down, the family who holds the loan, the Delahaye's, they wouldn't remit a single penny of that debt.
So the spiritual curse immediately becomes a concrete, catastrophic financial threat. His family's survival is on the line.
Which is the perfect segue, because before January can even really worry about voodoo queens, he is just slammed by the immediate, crushing financial reality of the era.
The stage is set for absolute ruin. And this brings us to the whole financial context of the 1830s.
Yeah, to really understand their desperation, you have to look at the macroeconomics of the time. This era was just defined by instability, largely thanks to President Andrew Jackson's fiscal policies.
Specifically his war on the Second Bank of the United States.
Right. He dismantled the central bank, and what that caused was, well, chaos. It led to a proliferation of these unregulated, what they called wildcat private banks.
And these banks were just printing their own money, their own notes, without enough specie gold or silver to back them up.
Not even close. The sources mention that merchants were constantly consulting these things called banknote reporters and detectors.
Just to figure out what was real money.
Exactly. Trying to figure out which pieces of paper were counterfeit and which banks were about to just disappear overnight. A depositor could wake up and find their life savings, these handfuls of worthless paper, couldn't even buy a loaf of bread.
And where was January and Rose's money?
Sitting in one of these vulnerable institutions. The Bank of Louisiana. Their initial $4,000 investment, their entire safety net from that pirate gold, is gone.
Vanished.
The crisis goes right to the top. The bank manager, a man named Oliver Weems, is accused of just cleaning out the vaults. All the specie and note reserves, except for about $30,000 in silver.
So the bank officers, they're represented by this guy, Hubert Granville. They are in a complete panic. They have to recover that money, and they have to do it fast.
Secretly, to cover up the embezzlement and prevent a run on the bank, which would ruin every single depositor and probably crash the whole institution.
So Granville comes to January with this desperate, incredibly risky proposition. Find Weems, retrieve the money.
And the compensation.
$500 plus expenses.
$500. Now that is a fraction of the $2,250 they owe, but it's their only lifeline.
It is. But let's just analyze the structural absurdity of this arrangement for a second. January is a black man in the South. His legal status as a free man is. It's tenuous the moment he leaves the relative protection of New Orleans.
This is where the risk becomes truly harrowing. Outside the city, January's freedom papers are extremely vulnerable. The constant threat is kidnapping, being seized and sold downriver into slavery.
And the sources give a dollar amount for that risk. A prime cotton hand in that region was valued at between $700 and $1,400.
So let's get this straight. January is being asked to risk a lifetime of forced labor valued at up to $1,400 for a temporary fix of $500.
It's the definition of precarious freedom. It's a moment where his very identity, his life, is priced by the market, and the price is shockingly low compared to the personal cost.
So to mitigate this, January forces Granville to make a heavy promise. He has to swear on his word as a gentleman, a white man's honor, to buy January and Rose back if they are caught and enslaved.
And there's this brilliant psychological insight here in the source material. January isn't fooled by easy promises.
No.
He notes that if Granville had just said an unthinking, "of course," he would have known the man was lying. He would have reneged immediately.
Instead, Granville pauses. He visibly calculates whether he could actually afford that $1,400 ransom. And that moment of calculation, ironically, that's what gives January a shred of faith in the pledge.
But the ultimate strategy for safety has to come from disguise. January can't travel as a free man.
No. He has to travel as the slave valet of his friend, Hannibal Sefton.
Tell us about Hannibal.
Hannibal's a gifted but very frail fiddler. He's known for his opium use, but he's a genius with the violin, and he's white.
And this is just a devastating commentary on the social order, isn't it? January, the educated surgeon, the free man, must deliberately adopt the status of chattel of property, just to move safely.
The rationale is that a slave is invisible.
Right.
And therefore safer than a free black man traveling alone, who is constantly visible, constantly seen as a threat to the established order.
So the journey begins. Weems, the embezzler, is described in this wonderfully specific detail. A small, dapper gentleman in a horrible rust-colored coat.
Oh, and a very unfortunate silk waistcoat of purple and mustard.
Awful. They watch him board an American steamboat, the Silver Moon, heading north up the treacherous Mississippi.
And Rose insists on joining them. January is terrified for her. He knows she could easily fetch hundreds on the auction block if she lost her papers.
But she's angry. She feels that they both made the decision to bank with Granville, so they're jointly responsible. Her decision to go with him, her silence, it's described powerfully as being like broken glass.
It's just pure desperation, trading the known dangers of New Orleans for the profound unknown dangers of the river.
Which brings us directly to the river itself and the environment of that steamboat.
Yeah, the Silver Moon is a small stern-wheeler. It's perfect for summer travel when the Mississippi is low 20 feet below its high water mark.
But low water doesn't mean safe. It means the river is intensely dangerous. They're constantly relying on leadsmen calling out the soundings.
You hear that famous call, Mark Twain, which means 12 feet of water, 2 fathoms, safe passage.
They're trying to avoid snags, submerged trees, treacherous sandbars, like the notorious Horsehead Bar. It is a grueling, slow journey defined by constant anxiety.
And the economics of cruelty is immediately visible to January. He's now forced to live on the lower promenade, the slave deck, as Hannibal's valet.
This is where the chained slave coffles are kept. And we meet the dealers. Ned Gleet, who is coarse and obnoxious, and Jubal Cain, who is cold, quiet, and pockmarked.
And the sources give us a truly necessary but horrific moment to illustrate the level of dehumanization required to sustain this trade.
It's hard to read.
It is. Gleet, trying to entice a young planter named Pearlie, displays a young enslaved woman. He tears open her dress, exposing her breasts. He coaxes the buyer, "Go ahead, feel of her. Tell me if you ain't felt titties as hard as those in all your born days."
Just awful. And January is forced to witness this casual brutality of a system that values a human life at maybe $1,000, $1,500 and treats bodies as disposable commodities. It's a sharp return to the reality he tried to escape in France.
Meanwhile, Hannibal is keeping up appearances on the upper deck. Different kind of tension up there. The gloomy main saloon is the center of the elite's social life. It hosts these card games, whist and cribbage, and these games become January's window into the passengers as he's serving Hannibal.
And they spot Weems,
Yeah.
the embezzler. He's there under the assumed protection of this masterful, dark-eyed woman, a Mrs. Fisher.
Weems is playing his cards with this cocky excitement. He's winning big at first.
But Hannibal, the frail fiddler, he's also a very sharp gambler.
Very sharp. He and a professional card sharp named Byrne, they realize Weems is just a naive mark. They play on his vanity, on his greed, and they set him up.
And Weems loses $775 in one night.
But the money isn't really the key takeaway there. It's the observation that Weems is reckless. He's vulnerable.
Right. So the investigation starts to focus on Mrs. Fisher. She claims she's fleeing a cruel husband in Cincinnati.
But her maid, Sophie Vigneur, provides contradictory information. And this maid, Sophie, she's clearly been traumatized. She's been subjected to the drunken aggression of deck passengers. Sophie insists her mistress is respectable, but January and Rose, they see the disconnect between Mrs. Fisher's refined appearance and the maid's palpable fear. The conflicting details about their travel. The whole upper deck is just a powder keg of suspicion and concealed identities.
And as they push further north, that tension is going to boil over into violence. And it's a signal that their cover is likely blown.
It's time to move into the deep analytical core of this narrative. The investigation unravels.
Okay, so their first major interruption happens at Natchez. Beautiful town, wealthy, built on a high bluff.
Right, and Weems and Fisher get off the boat. They offload 2 large trunks. January sees this from the bow deck, and he initially assumes what you'd expect.
That they're stashing the loot.
Exactly. A feint to distract any pursuers, drop some of it off for later collection.
But when Hannibal manages to pick the lock on those trunks later, the reveal is startling.
What's inside?
They're full of old books, Bible tracts, sermons, no gold, no money.
So it was a trap.
A deliberate, costly trap designed to lure January and Hannibal ashore. And it works.
They're immediately lured off the boat and arrested by a Deputy Rees on a bogus sleeve stealing charge.
And January, the free man, is walked across the yard, past a man chained at the whipping post, and locked in this stifling slave jail with a young boy named Bobby.
It's a devastating moment for him. He's forced to listen to the constant sound of the whip, the screams from the yard. It's this horrific, visceral reminder of the fate that awaits him if his papers are successfully challenged. This is the reality of being unprotected.
But the jail door is intentionally left unbolted.
Yeah.
It's another trap. January senses it. He knows the only safe thing to do in the South is to remain under the protection of your owner.
Right.
But he slips out with the boy, Bobby, and meets a man who calls himself the Reverend Christmas, Levi Christmas. He claims to run the Underground Railway.
But January refuses to leave Hannibal behind, and that action completely stuns the enslaved boy, Bobby. He asks January if he really thinks his loyalty will matter when Hannibal's family eventually sells him off.
But January knows he can't abandon his frail friend, even if it defies the logic of immediate self-preservation.
And his caution, that loyalty, it proves to be life-saving, because they later learn the horrifying truth from a former pilot, Lundy. Christmas is a violent slave stealer who uses a horrific sail and escape game.
This is just. It's a critical insight into the era's deep moral corruption.
Absolutely. Christmas preaches at revival meetings while his gang steals horses. And worse, he promises desperate runaways freedom and money by selling them, helping them escape, selling them again to a new buyer.
Only to murder them after he's collected $4,000 or $5,000 from their repeated sales. He keeps all the profit.
He's an opportunistic monster, twisting the abolitionist movement into a for-profit racket, monetizing the desperation of people seeking freedom.
And while January is ashore dealing with this, Weems and Mrs. Fisher sneak back onto the boat, in disguise.
Weems in a French blue gown and veils. Fisher in a false beard and padding. They're clearly trying to retrieve something they left behind.
Their time is short, because Weems's body is discovered snagged in the Silver Moon's paddle wheel near Vicksburg.
So January's surgical training is instantly pressed into service. He performs an impromptu autopsy right there in the stateroom.
And what he finds is crucial to solving the murder. There's no water in the lungs.
Meaning he didn't drown.
Exactly. But there are multiple skull fractures. This confirms Weems was already dead when he was thrown into the river. He was murdered somewhere else on the boat.
And there's more. January discovers fresh scratches around the keyholes of several staterooms. This proves Weems had been frantically searching cabins just before he died.
He wasn't looking for the money itself,
Mm.
which he had clearly hidden somewhere else entirely. He was looking for something small, concealable, maybe a key or a document.
The discovery of the body just throws the entire vessel into suspicion. And January and Rose realized that Queen Regine's presence, the source of that initial Wawanga, was real.
How so?
January finds a small cubbyhole down in the hold, and inside is a juju bag. Black flannel, ashes, a wren's claw, and specific African herbs. Jack in the Pulpit and Christmas Rose.
The voodoo queen was hiding down in the dark, smelly hold.
The whole time, her warning wasn't just spiritual, it was practical surveillance. Rose herself later admits that the presence of the powerful Regine made her uneasy anywhere near the lower deck at night.
And the danger just escalates again, dramatically. The pilot, Kevin Malloy, challenges Hannibal to a duel.
Supposedly over Malloy trying to lift Miss Skippin's skirts.
But January immediately recognizes it's a setup. The fight is engineered by others, Fisher, Skippin, Levi Christmas's people, to force both Malloy and Hannibal off the boat. Get rid of the inconvenient pilot, frame Hannibal for it.
And this is where January's surgical knowledge is absolutely critical again. After the duel, where Hannibal astonishingly survives, January examines Malloy's body.
And he extracts a .45 caliber bullet, the same caliber as the guards' rifles. But more importantly, he determines the entry angle.
20 degrees left.
A 20-degree entry angle proves Malloy was not killed by Hannibal in a front-on duel. He was assassinated by a rifle shot, fired from the trees near the duel site at a place called Hitchens Chute.
The assassin used the duel as cover, framing Hannibal perfectly for murder.
Okay, so we have to connect the dots now. Who is doing the killing and why? The key to the entire mystery is dropped almost casually by the card-sharp Mr. Quince.
Who turns out to be a Philadelphia abolitionist.
Right. And he mentions that the cold, quiet slave dealer, Jubal Cain, looks exactly like a known abolitionist speaker named Judas Breton.
And that's it. That's the massive ha-ha moment of the whole deep dive.
It all clicks into place for January. Cain and the quiet steward, Thucydides, known by the chained man as Rhodus, they're brothers. Both have that distinctive Fulani bone structure.
They are not merely slave dealers, they are conductors on the Underground Railway.
Using the slave coffles as the ultimate invisible cover to move people north.
And Malloy was a blackmailer who stumbled onto their secret. A valet, Winslow, overheard Malloy threatening Cain. He said, "Have it your way, Breton, but if you don't want to see it printed in the Marysville Gazette, you and I better come to an understanding."
The paper trail confirms it. January finds a waterlogged copy of The Liberator, a prominent abolitionist paper, in Weems's pocket. And that paper contained a description of the abolitionist speaker, Judas Breton.
So Weems, the bank manager, wasn't just an embezzler. He was a mild abolitionist and a blackmailer. He used that article to extort money from Breton after Breton lost to him in that card game.
And Malloy, recognizing the leverage, must have stolen the article, or the key, Weems was searching for from Weems, which made him the next target. Malloy became a threat to this massive organized operation run by the Breton brothers.
Malloy was killed for leverage, not for cheating at cards, and Weems was searching the cabins for the physical key to the hidden loot, which Malloy likely had, but which the Underground Railway conductors also desperately needed to get off that boat.
The stage is set for the final chaotic confrontation. All the threads, finance, crime, voodoo, and abolition, they all converge.
Which moves us into the resolution and the call to action.
January, Rose, and the Breton brothers, Cain, the Finn Rhodus, they realize that Levi Christmas and his gang, the ones January narrowly avoided in Natchez, are waiting for them at a place called Brock's Woodyard. It's a final ambush.
They know the boat has to put in for wood. It creates a perfect stalled target, and the gunfight that follows is terrifyingly focused. Christmas's men are trying to shoot anyone except the slaves.
Because they want to secure their value.
Exactly. During the fight, Cain is shot and thrown overboard. January races to the lower deck to alert Rhodus, but Rhodus doesn't panic.
No, he immediately reaches into this filthy juju bag tied around his waist and pulls out a manacle key.
And here we have the complete circle of connections. That juju bag was Queen Regine's. It contained the African herbs and, crucially, the key. It confirms her involvement, her prophetic warning.
The Breton brothers use that key to free the men in their coffle. They use a pry bar provided by Thu to free Gleet's men as well.
The resulting chaos, the repeated collisions with obstacles, it leads to the Silver Moon sinking after the engine is damaged.
And the newly freed enslaved people, they escape on floating doors and planks, guided by the Underground Railway conductors who are, in this moment, nothing short of heroic.
And January himself risks drowning to rescue Julie Queen Regine's young granddaughter, who is trapped beneath falling trunks in the flooding hold. The man supposedly cursed by the Voodoo Queen ends up saving her lineage.
Julie confirms everything. That Rhodus and Thu are brothers, that they are conductors, that they had food, blankets, even poisons hidden in the hold for necessary use.
So with the immediate physical danger past, January turns back to his original mission, the money.
Right. And he deduces that Weems, with Mrs. Fisher's help, must have hidden the bulk of the gold and securities off the boat. And the only logical place linked to their New Orleans start was the cemetery.
The symbolism is powerful. He realizes they hid the loot, the stolen capital, inside 5 little coffins and placed them in an unkept, nameless tomb in St. Louis Cemetery.
He remembers seeing Mrs. Fisher, in her distinctive moss-green gown, pushing a burro with Weems at that very tomb before they even left New Orleans.
So the final piece of the puzzle is the key. The key Malloy stole, which Malloy then got rid of before he was killed. January makes this brilliant final deduction based on pilot knowledge.
Malloy would have tried to ditch that large wrought iron key off the boat at Hitch and Shoot, the location of his assassination.
And Lundy, the former pilot, confirms it. He says, everybody uses that big black oak that overhangs the chute in high water as a kind of message box.
And January finds it. The large wrought iron key, exactly what was needed to unlock that cemetery tomb, nailed inside a message box on that distinctively shaped tree.
So January, Rose, and Hannibal race back to New Orleans. They open the tomb, they find the 5 little coffins, and inside, glittering gold.
The financial crisis is averted. They pay off the critical $2,250 debt, and it leaves January with very little cash, but with absolute freedom from the tyranny of that debt.
But the personal cost of this rescue, the realization of the pervasive, inescapable violence, it means their fight for freedom isn't over, not by a long shot.
The source material shows this profound turning point when Judas Braden, the real Judas Braden, visits January and Rose. He reveals his true identity and his mission. He needs to recruit them.
He needs people with brains, with honesty, and critically, people with houses in the dense part of the city.
And January and Rose accept. Their comfortable Spanish-style home on Rue Esplanade will now become a safe harbor for escaping people, part of the Underground Railway.
And the entire loop of the narrative closes with Queen Regine. She visits the house, she confirms the conspiracy, she tells January she did not curse him with death. She placed a Vevea magic sign in brick dust and verbena water on his doorstep to warn him. Because she saw Julie trapped in the hold in a prophetic vision, her curse was a warning of the danger to his home, forcing him onto the path where he would ultimately save her granddaughter.
That is an incredible convergence of all the disparate elements, supernatural, financial, political, all driving the entire plot.
It is. And January is left to reflect on the difficult path ahead, balancing the desire to educate the young girls in Rose's quixotic school against the grim, dangerous necessity of freeing souls one by one through illegal and dangerous means.
So the entire journey, from the vulnerability caused by the 1830s financial collapse to the horrific realities on the Mississippi, it forced January and Rose to confront the limits of their own hard-won freedom.
They risked everything to save their status, only to realize that maintaining that status meant risking it all over again for the freedom of others.
So what's the ultimate synthesis here? The themes are so densely woven. The extreme fragility of economic and social status for free people of color.
The ubiquitous casual violence of the slave trade.
And the shocking, necessary alliances that forged true resistance.
You see musicians, abolitionists, slave dealers, voodoo practitioners, and free people of color all linked by necessity. The only way to move people and money safely through this structure is through these cross-cultural, highly dangerous alliances that constantly defy the rigid social order.
January secured his home and his financial stability, but he gained a much deeper insight. That merely owning property and being recognized as a libre was not true freedom. The debt to Granville may be settled, but the debt to humanity has just begun.
And this raises an important, persistent question for you, the listener, and for January himself. January and Rose spent all their energy, used their genius, risked their lives to secure their home, to make it a safe haven. What does it truly mean when the ultimate act of securing your own peace and stability is to immediately risk it all by offering that sanctuary to those in danger?
Constantly pushing the boundaries of what is considered safe.
And choosing the dangerous path of true abolition, that difficult choice. The choice between educating the next generation for a distant, better world or physically fighting to free the souls already trapped. That is the ultimate, unending cost of true freedom in a deeply corrupt society.
A long, dark, and often violently complicated road from the bright parlor of Rue Esplanade to the slave coffles of the river.
Indeed.
And that is the end of our deep dive.